Hello again, Gills fans. Welcome back to another episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It is, of course, match day review showtime. And unfortunately, the mood for myself and Reese is slightly different this week as it was after the Notts County victory last weekend. But I'm pleased to say we're joined by, for the second time this week, Kieran, a Newport County fan, who is, of course, going to be in a better mood than us to look back. I was going to say on all the talking points, but there probably wasn't that many, unfortunately. There was one, which we'll get to. So yeah, let's get straight into this episode. We'll start in the same sort of format as we always do, and that was 2 o'clock team news. Two very similar systems, I think it's fair to say. Newport lined it up with Townsend in goal, the back three of Baker, Clark, and Bennett. McLaughlin and Lewis were the wing-backs. They then had a trio of Morris, Wildig and Charsley in the middle of the park, and it was Evans and Palmer Holden as a front two. For the Gills, a slight tweak on a system, couple of changes. Jake Turner in goal, same back three, back five, depending on how you saw us set up. Hutton, Masterson, Ema, Ogie and Clark. And then it was Mahoney, Coleman, Dieng in Lapsley as a quartet of midfielders, and Ollie Hawkins was the lone striker. We'll get on to that system and shape and the tweaks to it and if it worked or not in a show. But my summary was average game, gents, between two sides, not at their best, settled by a piece of quality, not in keeping with the rest of the game. Kieran, come to you first. Fair assessment?
I think that's the actual perfect assessment. I was like I said, you off of the record, and I was listening to Stephen Clements, I think your manager's name is, and he was talking about all the post-match stuff, and he said it had a 0-0 written all over it, which for the most part I agree with. I don't think either team really shone themselves with too much glory up front on a Tuesday, which at the end of the day, well, I'm all over with date Saturday, but either way, I don't think either team really showed themselves too well, up front at all yesterday. But I think the quality really came from both teams' backlines. I think it was very much a competitive game and a fun one to watch from that aspect. But yeah, I suppose a very average game, just with one moment of magic, wouldn't it? At the end of the day, sometimes games of football are defined by that.
Absolutely. And Reece, I'll come to you now. Obviously, it was a game where both defences were on top. The disappointment for me is, and I think Stephen Clements said it as well, is the fact that not once did I feel we were under any concerted pressure. I'm sure Newport felt exactly the same, but we was never under the cosh. Everything that came into our box, we dealt with fairly comfortably, apart from one occasion. Just never got going though, did we?
No.
In a forward sense compared to what we've seen. Like we scored 5 in the last 2 games, which is a massive improvement from where we've come from. So, but yesterday it just felt like in that aspect we'd taken a couple of steps back again in terms of crosses coming into the box. I think the time we got most crosses into the box was after Ollie Hawkins had come off, which didn't really make sense. I know the desperation starts to come in a little bit the closer that full-time whistle comes, but it just felt like we got the approach wrong for the personnel quite a lot of the time.
I think so. I'm going to go back to the first one. That wasn't an advert for a League Two game. Well, 98% of that game was not an advert for League Two, albeit the goal probably was the advert for the League Two. It was a nice finish.
That was probably an advert for Premier League football. It was that good.
Yeah, actually, we'll assess it later. I've got a nice thing to say about that. But on from Jill's perspective, it was just, yeah, it was flat. We never got. I mean, did we even get out of first gear? I'm not quite sure we got out of first gear. Like it kind of felt like it was just. I'd tell you what it felt like. It was reminiscent of how we kind of like after we won our first 4 1-0s of the season, or whether it was at the start of the season, and we just couldn't put it at the back of the net, and then we were getting into the final third and not doing anything with it. It felt like that, which was a shame considering the last 2 games that we had, but we scored 5 goals. And I just hope we have turned a corner, and this is the exception. But we'll only find that out in the next subsequent games.
That's it. Yeah, we are more hopeful now that it's a blip, which is a positive from a negative. But of course, we can't have hardly any more performances like this as the games get ticked off, and the business end of the season is probably in view now.
No, absolutely, yeah, and this is the most important. It's a busy period as well. I think give it 2 weeks, we'll know exactly where we're headed. I think that's. And that's true. That's the harsh reality of this. So we're either going to be lingering down in the mid-table regions, or actually really pushing for a playoff spot. But we wait to see how that one unfolds. But I think in 2 weeks' time, when we have a chat, we'll know where we're at.
That's it, yeah. It puts more pressure on Stockport and Wrexham, but two sides that hopefully will give us space to play in, but time will tell. Let's have a look at the timeline of the game, and this might be shorter than usual. First comment I've made is fairly mundane start to proceedings. We looked comfortable, as did Newport. Game was being played in front of both defences, I think was my assessment of it. There was no one trying to get in behind. Everything was sideways and fairly routine for the defenders. I think the first chance came after about 15 minutes, and to be fair, it came to the home side, and it was probably the first time in the game where anyone in a wide area got a modicum of space, and I think it was Lewis, the left back, who pushed on. It was a good ball into the box. I think Seb Palmer-Holden does well to get in between two centre halves. I want to give credit to Jake Turner here, Reece, because you're a goalkeeper. Keeper gets nothing on it. He comes to punch it. But if that's the centre half, we say, if you can't get to the ball and win it, come out and do something to make it difficult. Excuse me. Frog in my throat. I wasn't getting emotional. But do we have to give Jake Turner credit for the fact that he's come and made it difficult for the centre forward? As much as we could say Palmer Holden's got there first, he should hit the target.
No, I agree. Actually, when I did my video yesterday, that is pretty much the thing I said at the end. I was like, if Jake Turner doesn't go for that, there's every opportunity that header goes on target. You have to do all you can to put your player off. And what I liked about that is, because he comes a lot of criticism, Jake Turner, and I think it's unjust, a lot of it. But
absolutely agree.
But that one, he's committed to go for that ball. And as a result, he's followed through with his commitment, albeit he hasn't got anything on it, but he's done enough to put the player off, to put the header actually comfortably well wide from our perspective. So that is also an important goalkeeper's role, is to be big and be there and make it difficult for everyone. And that's, well, for the opposition, not for your defence, of course. but that's what Jake Turner did for that particular moment yesterday. And yeah, he was strong, got in the way, and didn't touch the ball, but made it tough. And I think that's why that header went miles wide, actually.
Yeah, come to you, because if Jake Turner doesn't go for that, Palmer Holden's got a free header and probably does put it in the back of the net. I suppose as a centre forward, as much as you don't like to say it, if you see a 6'4" keeper come flying at you like that, you're going to take your eye off the ball slightly, and that's what Turner's done. Obviously, from your point of view, it's frustrating because it was the first proper opening in the game, and again, it wasn't in keeping with the rest of the proceedings, was it? It was a bit of quality from wide, which we didn't see for the rest of the game, aside from once in the second half.
I think there was one point during my my vlog thing where I was talking about the game. I think there was one point where I was saying that, like, if you use the wings, I noticed how tall your forwards were. So I was quite surprised to not see them utilised more. But yeah, definitely agree. I think it was the first time the entire game. I think we did maybe twice or three times ever, and we'll include the goal later on, where we actually utilised the wings, and we'd had success off the wings this season, whether it be, you get the lucky bounce off of a defender, or just typical League Two defending means that you keep hold of the ball and score. But yeah, it's very well done by Turner, in all fairness. I mean, like you said, when you've got a 6'4" goalkeeper approaching you, it is going to be something that puts you off the ball a little bit. And yeah, it's the thing of, he made that split decision to, instead of hold his line and then try and save it if the ball was on target from Palmer Holden. I imagine it would have been, should he have not been pressured so much. Instead, he's decided to go for the ball. It could have been very risky if he caught him. He didn't get the ball, but like you both said, it definitely put him off enough to where it was wider target. So yeah, it's frustrating in a way that it was the first chance of the game, and it was kind of made a mess of, but at the same time, you can understand why it was made a mess of, and it's very well done from a Jake Turner standpoint anyway.
We then said half chances, Reece. I think it's fair to say. I've written down half chances. I might be being generous. Such was the nature of the first half. Conor Mahoney picked the ball up, I think, just on the halfway line and jinked past a couple of players and drifted sort of right to left. First point, he plays in Gills Lapsley. Gills Lapsley is essentially through on goal if he doesn't get pulled down by the centre-back. Referee, who we might talk about at the end, plays an advantage. I think it's Ollie Hawkins. I think Gills had it down as Timmy Dieng on social media, but I'm 99% sure it was Ollie Hawkins who's the one that gets on the end of it and unfortunately doesn't make a proper connection, and it's a foul. Sorry, it's a comfortable save for the keeper, Townsend. But that was the first sign after about 20 minutes of Gills actually playing with any type of impetus and trying to play through Newport County's midfield and backline. And it was something we just didn't see enough of. What did you make of that passage of play? Pleasing that we was trying to do it. Frustrating that if Jules Lapsley goes down and we don't have the shot, there's a free kick. And dare I say it, some action against the defender, because I'm not sure whether he was last man, but it would have certainly been a card of one colour.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a shame that it's taken us 20 minutes to get into the game in that sense. Like, just not like to make good chances, just to make a chance. You know, it was a real shame it took that long. Yeah, and it's a really funny. If I remember correctly, it's interesting that ball that went through to, it was good work by Mahoney. Then goes to Lapsley, and he does. I think Lapsley gets yanked down, and in all fairness to Lapsley, he does pretty well, whilst also, in my opinion, being impeded to get the ball to Ollie Hawkins. Like, he does all that he can, in my opinion, to get the ball.
Does he touch it then? Because it didn't look to me like Hawkins, that Lapsley touched the ball from where our viewpoint was in the ground.
Oh, I say, you know, from it looked like he took a touch and got the ball through. I think he had,
so that's why the advantage is played then. Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be corrected on that, but I'm 90% sure he got a touch on it and put it through. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I think that he was impeded, and it probably should have been. I mean, if there's advantage there, yeah, maybe Hawkins took the shot, but I don't know. It's a funny one. It's not the best shot from Hawkins. I know he's known for his height and his heading, but he can also put his foot through the ball. And it was a bit of a scuffed shot, which is very reminiscent of my pitching wedge on the golf course. You know, it was a little bit like that. But yeah, it wasn't. If that's the patch to play we're talking about, it's not the best one from Gilles' standpoint, and that's the best that we had to shout about possibly in that first 20-25 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And correction, sorry, I've made an error there. It was Dieng, the first one. I think there was a miscommunication on social media regarding the second chance, which was the one that came shortly after. Half chance again. Mahoney again involved. This time drifted out to the left-hand side, puts a ball in right-footed in, swinging, and I think there's a ball that sort of bounces round the centre halves and through to the far post. This was the one where I think Gilles might have got it wrong. They said Masterson, but I think this one was Ollie Hawkins. It bounces through and he toe pokes it towards goal. Townsend, you've got to give credit, Kieran, because he makes a really good save. Wouldn't have counted because the flag was unfortunately up. But it was just signs that Gilles were potentially trying to put their foot on the ball and grab hold of the game. But I've written after that, Kieran, more much of a muchness. Both sides cancelled each other out, and it all just drifted very nondescriptly towards half-time.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect description. And it's one of the things I've said many a times while watching Newport is, you know, possessions highly contested at the midfield. Nothing's really been made in terms of advancing runs. It almost feels like you're watching a game of rugby half the time. It's just long ball after long ball at some points during that game. But yeah, there were maybe, you know, like I had said during the game, there were maybe 4 chances throughout the entirety of the first half, and I think it's generous to call it, you know, to call all of those chances. Yeah, credit to Townsend on that save. Again, offside, but, you know, you still want to make the save until, you know, the whistle's blown. So
exactly,
it's a fantastic save, and it'll be more something that I probably dwell on later, because I think he was given the man of the match award at the end of the game, and I think it was well deserved. It was his 150th game for Newport, and you know, he put it together with a clean sheet. He did really well throughout the game. But yeah, it really was a lackluster first half, wasn't it? Let's be entirely straight with that. It just didn't really feel like either team got out the first gear. And yeah, I understand potentially fixtures and all that probably playing a part in it anyway.
Yeah, that's a fair point, because a lot of teams have had to play Saturday, Tuesday, and we've got to do Saturday, Tuesday again this week. It is a busy period, and it's when you need your squad and you need people to not pick up injuries, which unfortunately we've done again, it seems. One of them injuries was to Jules Lapsley, Reece, which I wasn't aware of at the time, but apparently it has been mentioned that he had a calf problem. Sums up Jules Lapsley's Gillingham career, unfortunately, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Maybe tries to get a run of games, picks up a knock, starts playing well, picks up a knock, doesn't play well, comes out the side, comes back in, picks up a knock, vicious circle. Ashley Nadesan came on.
Yeah, how can any player really get on a run of momentum if that's what's happening to them? It's almost impossible, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, I feel bad for the fella. Yeah, it's I did know that actually, and in another little, our list of injury woes is starting to tot up a little bit actually, as you just mentioned. We seemed pretty clean for a while, but now, yeah, it's getting a little bit longer than that list than we desire.
It is, yeah, especially with massive games on the horizon. I looked to the end of February, and it was obviously Stockport and Wrexham, and then it's Inform, Salford, and then Barrow, I think, straight after. So the games are coming thick and fast, and they're all massive ones as well, which is anyway, I divulged second half. Let's get on to that, because that was an absolute thriller. Said nobody ever. One thing I noticed about Gills, Reece, was they started to try and play the game sort of 10 yards higher up the pitch. I felt first half that we was playing a flat back five. Ramo Hutton has essentially spent his time in opposition half since arriving, and it's just cross after cross into the box, which has obviously been a huge part of the upturn in terms of creation and goals scored. Didn't think him or Max Clark did that nearly enough first half. You don't want both doing it at the same time, because then you can get caught out in behind because there's too much space, but you want one to be doing it, and then one of your centre-halves just drifts out to make a back four. But I just felt we was very easy to play against in that first period, because we had a bank of five and a bank of three, and then sort of lapsely in between Hawkins and the midfield, and it didn't really work for me. Conor Mahoney, I thought, was at the heart of our best moments, but he was having to get the ball too deep. So it was good to see us play higher up. I've then written down both sides slinging balls into the box. Again, all dealt with fairly comfortably. Penalty claim for the Gills, though, and I'm going to ask Kieran first. There was a corner that came in, and Maxime was threatening to get his head on it at the back post. I've got a really good view of it, because we was obviously in that stand to the side of the pitch and right in line with where we was attacking second half. Defenders making absolutely no attempt to play the football. Referee says it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other there, to quote, or nearly quote, Peter Lloyd. I'll ask you, Kieran, what you thought of it from a home team perspective before I come to Reece and see what his views on were. My point is, defenders giving the decision, the referee a decision to make, isn't it? It could have easily been given as a spot kick.
Oh, it definitely could have. And it was one of the situations I was kind of watching it, and the side I was on, I was literally on the opposite side of the stadium to,
Fair enough.
To that incident. But what I could see was, a good few defenders going for the ball. But like you said, it ended up not being a attempt of playing football. And I think it was one of those 50-50, a different day that is given as a spot kick. But like you said, the defenders, because of how many there were there, because of the position of where it was, you kind of got two decisions to make there. And on a different day, that is given most likely as a penalty. So to a degree, I think we were definitely let off in that regard anyway.
And Reece, obviously you were watching and I follow, so I'm not sure. I've not watched highlights yet. So what side were you getting that? Did you get a good view of that, or are you almost blindsided like Kieran was?
Got the same side as you. And it's quite, what I find funny about this one is the referee was quite clear with his on his outset of sort of like manhandled each other and bullying each other as one-on-one battles. He was very clear. He gave a lot of those free kicks throughout the game. So from one perspective, you can be surprised that he didn't give that as a penalty. I wonder if that happened
so then
outside
you come back
the
to
box.
Exactly, and that's literally what we said in the ground, was if that's outside the box, if that's on the halfway line, he blows his whistle and he gives free kick. So why is it different in the box? Which
is always kind of my argument. But then again, you could argue from that perspective, but in the same context, you could argue, would he have given a free kick outside the box? But I would argue more likely, because that was the game that he set out to referee, it seemed, throughout the whole of the game. So from our perspective, you can be disappointed he didn't blow over a penalty, but at the same time, I think if it wasn't for how he set out the game, I say 50% of referees probably give that as a penalty. But it was quite surprising, considering that the referee was saying, look, if you're going to battle like that, he gave a lot of fouls when there was a lot of contesting in the middle of the park. So yeah, it's disappointing, I have to say. And Aimer is manhandled, I think, to the floor to a certain extent. It was Aimer, wasn't it, Matt?
It was Maxime, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So
and there was a lot of that going on in the game, a lot of wrestling, and people just not looking at the football and just trying to hold on their men when they're trying to mark, which obviously at the top end of the game, with my favourite thing in the world, VAR, you don't get away with. But at League Two, obviously you can hide, and I'm not saying we don't do it either, but that was, for me, was one of the more blatant ones that I felt could easily have been given as a spot kick. There was a half chance for Newport County shortly after. I think it was Wildig let fly from a short corner, which I don't think we switched on to. They'd done it a couple of times. Reece, ball had been played out short, then a ball had come into our box and we'd headed it clear. But again, we were still letting the first or second pass come across the box. It's a good hit from Aaron Wildig, Kieran, from your point of view, and it's obviously something that you've worked on the training ground. It's a comfortable save, though, for Jake Turner. It's a good height, and he manages to beat it away. But, I mean, we're taking any sort of modicum of quality here as something to talk about, aren't we? Such was the nature of the game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you kind of have to talk about any form of offensive quality, don't you? We were noticing when taking these short corners, a lot of the time we weren't beating the first man, so it was quite nice to instead kind of go wide and just have a shot, give the fans something to be excited about, because like we would have said, the definition of that game was flat, and up until that point, it definitely was, other than the the one or two chances that were made during the game. But yeah, it's one that, we take on long shots every now and again when things aren't going our way creatively, just to try and test the keeper. And I suppose in this circumstance, we didn't test them as much as we wanted to, but it was definitely, signs that we were at least trying to score, which, was almost felt like a rarity for a lot of the games.
Always helps, doesn't it? Always helps.
Yeah,
football match.
Exactly. It always helps when you're trying to score, but it almost felt a level of desperation in terms of our setup, because like I would have said many a times, it was flat. We weren't really creating anything. We weren't, providing these ranges of passes we usually provide, which merits, where we are in terms of league positioning and all this stuff. It was very much an old school kind of physical game of football. So at the end of the day, we had to try something, and a long shot, I suppose, from, I think an ambitious distance would be the correct way to put it. That had to be the way to do it. And, when you're at a point where you have to waffle about a long shot being the main,
really well,
the main
mate.
talking point.
Well. I keep looking at the clock and I'm thinking we've still got to try and fill out some time.
You've still got to fill out some time. So, it's one of the key things, but it really shouldn't have been, let's be fair. Shortly
after, Reece, unfortunately, and I was sat with Nick doing the match day live. Great company as always, Nick, very knowledgeable, and I think shares similar sort of perspectives to ourselves, which is quite nice. As much as we like different opinions, it's quite, I don't know, cathartic, I suppose. He turned around and said at half time, I think, or just before, this game's going to be settled by an absolute howler or wonderful piece of quality. And unfortunately, the wonderful piece of quality came from the home team. We can sit here and be overcritical of the first phase where they play little triangles round us. Do we do enough to get the ball, to get out, to stop the cross and the ball coming into our box? Maybe not. But it's one of them, and my views on this. Sometimes we don't have to blame someone. We have to just hold our hands up and say that is a bloody good finish, which is exactly what we got from Will Evans. The ball comes in, he takes it on the volley, left-footed first time. It goes across. I think Stephen Clements described it as a sidewinder. That's not a description of a goal I've heard for quite a few years, but it's bloody brilliant from Evans to control that volley into the far corner off the far post. Jake Turner dives. I don't think he really had to bother because he was getting absolutely nowhere near it, and Newport in a flash had taken the lead.
Yeah, it reminded me of Zidane's goal in the Champions League all those years ago. A little bit.
The one that dropped out the sky against Leverkusen. Yeah, it went in the other corner, didn't he? But yeah, technique is very good. Don't adjust your set. Sorry, Reece, I'm just going to intercept there. Do not adjust your sets, anyone who's watching. We did just compare the Champions League final to this game. We will now revert to type and go back to normal, and I do apologise for that oversight.
Yeah, I could only second that apology. No, but not to take away, but Evans' technique was fantastic, really good. And like you say, sometimes you got. I think when I tried to commentate on my video, I was like trying to find little holes in areas of defence. I was like, do you know what? Actually, that was a really good finish. That was
Sometimes
just really good.
Can't, can you?
No, I was like, you know what? Yeah, it's just an absolute peach of a volley, and the technique behind that is quite incredible, actually. Like to be able to do that, to get not just to get it on target, but to get enough power to hit the sweet spot to curl it away from the goalkeeper. It's one of those you hit in training and you turn to your mates and go, "Oh, wow, did you see that one?" Yeah. It's an absolutely fantastic shot from Evans, and it shows. He scored quite a few goals for you now, hasn't he, Kieran, this season? And And I think, yeah, if he can pull those out of the bag, I can see why.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose from your point of view, Kieran, it's absolutely brilliant to watch. Of course it is. We had one last week at Notts County with Max Clark, and we've had a couple of others this season. You have to enjoy them when they come along. Yeah, I don't really want to talk about it anymore, so I'll let you just give us your view on it, Kieran.
I mean, I think it's the first time in the game where we're actually using these triangles of pass, so to speak, and one of the only 3 times where we've actually used the wing. I think half of the reason you didn't come out to, stop the cross, and I think it was one of the things that, maybe not enough is done on it. But at the same time, do you expect players or, can you expect them to keep up kind of the intensity of making sure that a cross doesn't come through when for 65 minutes nothing's happened? It is one of those things where potentially I suppose a lack of concentration, in one word, is one way to put it. But I mean, yeah, we've been quite lucky, quite fortunate in many a games to have scored absolute worldies, which have meant we've come away with 3 points. And I think that's 19 in League Two for Evans this season. And I think it's matched with either 23 or 24 goals in all competitions, which is stupid numbers. It's one of those things where we're talking in terms of the summer for Newport. It's going to be very much an interesting saga to watch on to where Will Evans goes. But yeah, it's his weak foot. It's hit the post, and it's wrapped around the keeper. It's a phenomenal finish, and I admittedly I could sit here and talk about the technique and the fact that he almost put himself on his own and that he was in that position. I could talk about that for ages, just because so many times.
I'm not going to let you.
So many times this season, he's just in the right place at the right time, and I think that is exactly what it is. Of course, you need a bit more technique to, wrap your foot around the ball, so to speak, in that regard, than to just toe poke it into the net when there's no keeper. But equally so, it's just there's nothing I can say about it that isn't absolutely phenomenal, because it's the one point of the game that actually is. And I think you had said it. I think a few other Gillingham fans have said it. At the end of the day, some games are defined by moments, and that was the moment that did define the game, because otherwise you're not looking at much of quality at all. And the fact that many of our talking points have been talking points kind of speaks to that, doesn't it?
That's it. And the other thing you have to think of, 9 times out of 10 that ends up in that terrace behind the goal. That's the thing. It's such a hard technique to pull off, and then we're not even talking about the fact that maybe we've not quite got out to the cross quick enough. But it went in the top corner. We then had to but look into our reserves of that mentality that's seen us pick up a few points from coming from behind in recent weeks. I thought we responded all right, to be fair. I think there was a couple of half chances. One I've written down was there was a corner from Mahoney. Ollie Hawkins again. I get that players at certain levels of the game like to swap shirts, but Ollie Hawkins was being undressed throughout the 90 minutes without much help from the man in the middle again. But I don't want to talk about the officials, because that's not the reason we lost. We lost because Will Evans produced one unbelievable moment of magic. He headed over under pressure from the centre half. We made a change, which was brave, and I was very okay with that. Shadogi came off. Johnny Williams came on. We went to a 4-4-2 to try and get ourselves into better areas quicker. Then our big chance came, our big moment of quality. Not as good as the Newport one in terms of individual brilliance, but we finally cut them open. And again, Mahoney was at the heart of it. Didn't see loads of the ball, but every time he had it, he looked like he could make something happen throughout the 90 minutes. And he wriggles away, I think, from his man and plays a ball back to Romeo Hutton, who was a lot higher, as we've already mentioned. Change of approach from Hutton. Usually it's whip it in at height, because we've got Ollie Hawkins and Timmy Dieng there, but he's clever with this one. Fizz it is into feet in between 2 centre-backs, and Timmy Dieng makes a great run and shot. Again, you've got to give credit to Nick Townsend. It's a really, really good save. And then, unfortunately, the rebound just comes back at Timmy too quickly, and he can't adjust his body, and it sort of bounces off him, essentially, and goes into the stand sort of near where the wetter Gillingham fans were on the afternoon. But again, it was an isolated moment, and we just didn't do it consistently enough, did we, on the day?
No, and it's interesting. The towels are too harsh for our wing backs were telling. So it's quite funny how I think for the first half, Hutton, it was a very weak excuse of a wing back put a role in the first half. He wasn't up the pitch enough, but in the second half he was. But then you make the point. We made the substitution, which then essentially puts us at a four at the back, which is more of a right back. You don't wing back so much. You've got five, but he's up higher. But I think that's indicative of the fact we went behind and we're trying to push on to try and get something from the game. So he's of course going to be a lot higher to try and be to create more chaos and to put balls into the box. And like this one came into the box, I think it bypassed the Gills player actually. And I wonder, as a result of, I can't think of who it was. It might have been Mahoney who it sort of went someone in the box before it got to Dieng. And I wonder if that obstructed the view or maybe was a bit of a surprise to him, even though he made the run. Sometimes it could, like we talked about Jake Turner coming out and putting people off. Sometimes it can happen at the other end as well when you may even anticipate a ball, but someone's in the way, then it comes past, then you lose half a second, and that might just be enough to not get the strongest connection to put it on goal, or put it on goal with a bit more power. And I want, because it was a good save from Townsend, I have to say, he got down low to his left hand side, and as a result from the save as well, it pinged off of him, which obviously made it difficult for Dieng to get a decent shot back on goal. But I wonder if Dieng in that moment, if he had that opportunity again, I wonder if he would focus a bit more, because I think he must have lost a little bit of concentration. It fizzed across the box, because as you say, Hutton does have a plethora of different approaches to getting the ball in the box, and to fizz it low like that, which he's capable of doing because he sees that key pass. But I wonder if it was a little bit of an unexpected ball from Dieng, because it had to go sort of past one or two players. I don't know. It's very hard to see from a player's perspective, but I wonder. But I wonder if Dieng will be kicking himself for that one, because albeit a shot on target, a good save from Townsend, I think Dieng is capable of better in those positions. But
yeah, we saw his goal against Charlton, didn't we, in the FA Cup? Similar, sort of running onto it though and sliding it past the keeper. I personally think you're doing a disservice to Nick Townsend here by trying to say that it's because I think it's a bloody good save, but we all see it different, don't we? and that's why we get different people on to talk about it. But that was our big chance, you felt, and I guess at that point we were starting to think it's going to be one of them days, and it's a bloody long way home from Wales if we're going to get beat. We then made more changes, I think, didn't we? Oh no, we made another chance. No, we didn't. I've just done that one. Can't even read my own writing. It's early. Triple change. Dieng, Max Clark and Ollie Hawkins all came off, and we introduced Scott Malone, Jaden Clark back in the squad due to a couple of injuries, and Josh Walker. So it was no change to the system. It was just change of personnel. It was still 4-4-2. We became very urgent and very frantic in our work in the last few minutes, which was understandable. You're trying to get back into a game that you probably feel you shouldn't be behind in based on the overall pat of the match. There was a half chance. Coleman did well middle of the park and played it out wide. Masterson got Johnny Williams in. Johnny Williams was busy, which we know what he does when he's on the pitch. Plays a really cute reverse ball, to be fair, and Jaden Clark makes a good run in behind. But back to that comment that we made at the start of the show about it feeling like we've just gone a couple of steps back in terms of problems in the final third. Jaden Clark sort of does neither one thing nor the other. He doesn't cut it back. He doesn't try and pick out anyone, and it's cleared fairly comfortably. And then, unfortunately, from our point of view, I put down more crosses flung into the Newport box, but they see it out fairly comfortably. And then the final whistle was blown, and it was defeat in Wales by 1-0.
Yeah, it was. I wanted to say one thing actually. In that sort of last 15 minutes of passion play, there were a couple of moments from key players where there was one from Malone on the left-hand side. He had a great opportunity to put a left foot ball into the box, and he just scuffed it, and it went across the floor.
That was right in front of us, yeah.
And there was a free kick the other side as well, which, and Mahoney hits the wall, and you think, you have quality. This is not the time to put a duffel at the bag,
It's wrong. It's wrong choice again, isn't it? The Malone one's a scuff. I get that, but Mahoney picks the wrong option. You should just be putting that into the danger area. And like we've said, I don't know if that was before we started recording or just before, it seemed that we got more balls into the box after Ollie Hawkins had gone off, ironically. So it seemed a bit mismatched yesterday. Couple of questions before we start wrapping this one up. Reece, Gills' system yesterday, did it work? There was a couple of changes. I thought it was going to be like Ollie Hawkins with Lapsley and Mahoney as two number 10s, but it didn't feel like that. It felt like Conor Mahoney was very deep in that first half, which I don't think suits him. It wasn't a shape that I could work out immediately watching the game. Assessment quickly.
Yeah, first and foremost, I think Hawkins was left a little bit alone up there. He had no one to play off of, and the delivery to him wasn't the strongest. Yeah, Mahoney was playing too deep for me as well. I just think that considering the shape and the type of play, it was clear what the play was the last two games, what our approach was. This one was really unclear, and I think that transposed onto the players as well. And it felt a little bit loose and a very individualistic approach to a game yesterday, rather compared to the other two games, which was much more of a team approach. So for me, the system didn't quite work for me yesterday. No,
it just felt like we were playing to stay in the game as long as possible, which I felt was a bit frustrating because we've been decent the last two games. You're a minute away from taking 6 out of 6 in the last two, albeit for a Harry McCurdy equaliser. So it just felt like a little bit. I felt we was too safe, but I guess that's showing respect to a Newport side who've been in decent form to counter that and obviously try and look at why Stephen Clements has taken that approach. But I totally agree about Ollie Hawkins won 12 of his 17 aerial duels, but we never seemed to have anyone close enough to him to make anything of it. It was all a bit hopeful after it came off of Ollie Hawkins's head. Kieran, I think you've answered this already, but I'd written it down before. I can only recall 2 proper saves in the game, 2 that count. There was one that was the offside one that Townsend made, but did you deserve to win? And I get you've scored a great goal, so you can say, yeah, we should win because we've produced the one moment of magic. But looking at the 90 minutes as a whole, draw was surely a fair result, wasn't it? 0-0.
Yeah, I think you look at, 88, 89 minutes of that game and you say 0-0. And, there were a few chances to both sides where you think, on a different day, they do better there and they finish it. And maybe the tempo of the game increases. The players are energized if they get a goal and they want to go for more. But yeah, I think a 0-0 would have been more than creditable if you look at the full 90 minutes. But I really liked the way that we managed it after going 1-0 down. We went from almost trying to, really go for it to, I think there were circumstances where Harry Charsley got injured, so we had to make a few changes, but we used the defenders we had on the bench. We saw Carl Jameson come back for the first time, and it almost feels months since he's been gone. So I really liked how we managed it from going 1-0 up to really hold the lead, because you never realistically felt there was going to be a second goal throughout the contest. But yeah, to be fair, a 0-0 would have been completely reasonable, and I probably would have taken it if you would have offered me that before the game. But you can't complain when there's a moment of magic. Absolutely, and you kind of just move on from there.
No, I'm not asking you to not enjoy it, not in the slightest. It's similar to us against Sutton a few weeks ago, Reece, when they had a player sent off and just went to 2 banks of 4, and we enjoyed Scott Malone's late volley. So it's a fair play to Newport. They found a way to get themselves over the line, and we couldn't find a way to peg them back. And that's the nature of football. And on the subject of nature of football, Reece, and the marvellously enjoyable outcry and fallout from it on social media on Saturday evening, which I tried to avoid. I was on the coach back from Wales, so I decided to just put my headphones in and listen to some music and close my eyes for an hour or so, because it was a cesspit essentially on social media. The overreaction is absolutely incredible. Like, these are the same players that everyone was lauding 8 days ago for going to Meadow Lane and winning by 3-1, and now we're seeing things like they're pathetic and clueless and get rid of half the squad and that sort of thing. And perspective, please.
I think firstly, what it does expose is that everyone is emotionally connected to their football team. I think that's very clear. But which, so at least we're all arguing, saying things from the same place. However, I do think I think it's important to always look at perspective from a larger scale. I mean, it's so easy to look at individual performance on individual games. I mean, you play that game against Newport yesterday, and you play it 10 more times, you get 10 different outcomes. 5 games are brilliant, 5 games are rubbish. I mean, I think that's indicative of League 2 football as well, and probably League 1 football to a certain extent. Like, it's anyone can beat anyone. Teams will have off days. Teams will have days where they absolutely wipe the floor with someone. I mean, Tranmere beat Stockport 4-0 yesterday, and Salford beat Barrow 5-3. I mean, that's League 2 football. You're going to have a game which is going to end 1-0 and it'll be an absolute worldie. And I think I think it's unrealistic to expect any football team to perform 110% every game. And then people might say, well, what about the effort? And I will always say this: only the players know themselves if they've given 110%. Only they know that. And I find it very hard for people to comment on giving all the players are not giving the effort. They're not wearing they're not putting their heart on their sleeve, whatever phrase they want to use. Like, it's fine. You can have that opinion and I respect that, but only the players themselves know that. And so I just find it very challenging sometimes when that's being said, because if I was on the receiving end of that and I know that I absolutely gave a lot of huff and a lot of puff, it just didn't work for us, I would feel a little bit disappointed if I was reading that on social media, knowing that I may have been given the best I could have, because last 2 games we were applauded for how we were playing, particularly at Meadow Lane. And it's just, I think there's that inconsistency of approach with that look at individual games rather than larger scale, which I find really challenging. But that's what I think of it anyway.
Exactly. And we've said this before, and I've said it a million times. They're League Two footballers. If they was 8 and 9 out of 10 every week, they wouldn't be playing for Gillingham, they wouldn't be playing for Newport, and they wouldn't be playing in League Two. They'd be in the Championship or the Premier League or somewhere nice and sunny abroad, earning £150,000 a week. I just think it comes back to this thing about footballers being treated different. And I get they've got a privileged lifestyle and they get paid well for that, but they're still doing a job and they still have their own personal pride. If you were sat at school and you're suddenly a group of 20 individuals walk into your classroom and start screaming abuse at you because they think you're not teaching the right way, do you perform to your highest ability?
Absolutely not. No, it becomes a much more pressurous environment and it's not pleasant, right?
Exactly.
It's not. And yeah, that's a very nice comparison of fair play. Yeah.
Something to think about, Gills fans. I'm going to leave it there and wrap up this episode. Thanks as always to co-host Reese. It's always a pleasure. Kieran, appreciate you coming on twice this week. It's been really good to have you on. Congratulations on the 3 points and all the best for the rest of the season. As long as you don't nick that last playoff place at our expense. As always, thanks for watching. If you've got this far, Gills fans and Newport fans, thank you very much. Please keep hitting that subscribe button. We are less than 50 away now from 3,000 subscribers, so please get me there as quick as possible. Prize giveaway. I say it every week, prize giveaway. It's not going to be open to just Gills fans. That will be open to absolutely everybody. Again, I will put Kieran's Twitter details in the description at the bottom of the video. Go and give him a follow. You're all subscribed and following Reese already, so I don't have to tell you about that. Busy week in store. Tuesday night, massive game under the lights at Priestfield as we host Stockport County, so there will be a match day live for that. Wednesday, I'll be back with a match preview looking ahead to another huge game as we welcome that bloke Deadpool and his mate from Hollywood and all of his clan coming to Priestfield. It's Gillingham v Wrexham next Saturday, so loads to look forward to. Potentially a huge 7 days in the season of Gillingham as the finishing line starts to come into view. Enjoy the rest of your week and up the Gills.